You're going to get a husband. Those 4 words burned more fiercely than the fire that consumed my book seconds later. They left Bill's mouth, my father's, with the same coldness as someone discarding something old in the trash. He stood in the living room hurling my college materials straight into the fireplace, and smiling as if he were doing the right thing. My name is Kayla, and this is the story of how I grew up being reminded every day that women are not born to shine, only to serve. At least that was what my father believed. But I discovered in the most painful way that when no one believes in you, you learn to believe in yourself. Since I was little, I knew that there was a hierarchy in that house. Jason, my older brother, was the pride of the family. He received praise, freedom, and support for any dream. Soccer? Sure. Engineering course? We paid for it. Me? I was given an apron, a dish towel, and the order to learn the proper things for a decent woman. Before we continue with the story, I ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is very important to us. Thank you so much. You need to be useful, my mother Marcia would say, always looking down. A woman with too many opinions ends up alone. And I learned to be silent. But inside me that silence screamed. I loved to study. I read secretly at night with a small flashlight I had stolen from the tool drawer. Every word was a window into a world where I was more than the invisible daughter. I wanted to be a teacher, a researcher, anything that involved knowledge. But my father considered that an aberration. You want to turn into one of those feminists with blue hair and alone at 40? He mocked. A woman who studies too much becomes dead weight. No man wants that. And whenever I dared mention the word college, he would respond with a derisive laugh or a threat disguised as advice. At 17, in secret, I enrolled in the college entrance exam for literature. I used a school computer and asked for help from the coordinator, Kristen, a steadfast woman who looked beyond appearances. When I told her about my father, she squeezed my hand and said, "You're going to get through this. And one day he will regret it." When the results came out, I was accepted in first place. I couldn't contain my joy. It was as if the world had finally opened a door for me. But that door did not stay open for long. Bill found the acceptance paper in my backpack. Immediately he called everyone to the living room. He forced me to stand in front of the fireplace and began throwing my books into the flames. "You want to learn? Learn from this. Learn to be a woman. This," he said, pointing to the burning books, "is trash for someone who wants to marry and have a real family." My mother remained silent. Always silent. But that day for the first time I saw tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of defeat. That night I sat on the floor of my room and realized I couldn't go on like that. If I stayed, I would become exactly what they wanted. A shadow, an echo of someone else's will. So I waited for the early hours of the morning, packed a bag with clothes, the rest of the notebooks he hadn't burned, and the dictionary I had hidden under the mattress. I went to my mother's room. She was awake. "Are you leaving now?" she asked softly. I nodded, trembling inside. She said nothing. She simply took a $50 bill from the drawer, placed it in my hand and whispered, "Don't look back, Kayla. Go and make it count." And I went. I took a bus to the capital. I spent the first night in a bus terminal, then found shelter in a student house. I slept on the sofa, then in the laundry room until I managed a small room with 2 other girls to share the rent. By day I worked in a cafe, at night I studied, and on weekends I gave private lessons. It was hard. There were days when I ate nothing but rice and days when I wept in the college bathroom, terrified of giving up. But every time the pain hit, I remembered the fire, and I vowed to myself that no man would ever burn my dreams again. Kristen, the coordinator, continued to support me from afar. She sent books, scholarship recommendations, and letters of encouragement. I read every word as if they were bricks rebuilding my identity. And while my father spread rumors that I had run off with some boyfriend, I was constructing, brick by brick, the version of myself that he would never dare to dream. This was just the first page of my revolution. The first few months away from home were the hardest of my life. In the student house I shared a tiny space with 2 other girls, Amber and Tessa, who had also fled suffocating realities. None of us had much except one thing in common: dreams that the world tried to kill. We supported one another as best we could. We shared food, silence, and tears. What seemed impossible alone began to feel bearable. I would wake at 5 a.m. to catch the subway to the cafe where I worked. It was a small chain with noisy customers and grumpy managers, but it paid just enough to keep me going. Sometimes I hid books inside my apron and read during breaks between orders. Colleagues would laugh at me. "Are you going to become a rector?" they teased. I would smile and say, "Maybe." It was a joke to them. To me it was a prophecy. At night I dashed to college, exhausted yet hungry for everything. Literature was more than a passion. It was my reconstruction. I wasn't just learning about linguistics or literature. I was finally learning about myself. I received a partial scholarship thanks to my grades, and Kristen, my former coordinator, continued to be my angel from afar. Sometimes she sent me brief emails. "You are doing well. Don't stop." Once she even sent a book voucher along with the message. "Buy something your father would never let you read." I bought Virginia Woolf. And I cried while reading every page. Meanwhile, my father, Bill, still told the story of the rebellious daughter who ran away because she didn't want to obey. My uncles, cousins, even neighbors blocked me on social media. Some sent long judgment-filled messages. "Come back home while you still can. Life doesn't forgive stubborn women." But I kept going one step at a time. In my second year of college, a professor named Diane invited me to be a teaching assistant. It was my chance to officially step into the space I had always dreamed of, the university classroom. I remember trembling when I first held the key to the educational support room. It was small, nothing special, but to me it was like gold. It was a symbol that I existed, that I mattered. One day, on my way back from class, I found a handwritten letter from my mother, Marcia. It said only a few words, as always. "Your father keeps saying you'll regret this. But I know you won't. Every time you shine, I breathe a little easier. Take care. Don't trust anyone. Keep going." I kept that letter like a relic. In the student house, one of the girls eventually gave up and returned home. Another secured an internship and moved out. I was left alone, and that nearly broke me. Expenses grew tighter. I had to sell my cell phone to pay for what the scholarship didn't cover. I even started walking long distances to save on transportation. And still I went to class with my head held high. I learned to live with very little. But I learned even more about transforming pain into fuel. Every humiliation, every memory of my father's shouts, every time I heard, "This isn't for you," I stored them all. As proof. As evidence of how hard I was fighting against the impossible. In my third year, I was invited to present an academic paper at a regional event on education and gender. When my name appeared on the official flyer for the event, something inside me changed. It was no longer just about me. It was about every girl who had ever heard, "This isn't for you." It was about every Kayla still trapped in a home like the one I had fled. That week I received another letter. But this time it was from Jason, my brother. "Father won't stop speaking ill of you. He says you'll regret this. But he hides the newspapers." I froze. Newspapers? Yes. In recent months, a local educational blog had published 2 articles mentioning my research. One of them was even reproduced in a city newspaper. And Bill, my father, was trying to hide it. Somehow that only gave me more strength. Knowing that he was witnessing, albeit silently, what I was building. Knowing he could no longer erase my existence with a bonfire. His name would never again control me. At the end of that year, I secured an internship at a university research center. I worked as an academic assistant and spent weekends reviewing master's theses. Sometimes I could barely sleep. But all of it fueled me. Then one day I received an unexpected phone call. "Hi, this is from the Daily Academic Journal editorial team. We're doing a story on young female leaders in academic settings. Can we interview you?" I nearly dropped the phone. I took a deep breath and replied, "Of course. But only if I can talk about the beginning. Since the day they burned my books." The interview was published the following week. On the cover of the Daily Academic Journal was a photo of me smiling, facing the camera with the caption, "Kayla, 25 years old, from rejected daughter to the new promise of university education." The article spanned 2 pages. They told it all. My humble origins, my escape from home, years of quiet struggle, and my research on linguistic inclusion and gender inequality. They didn't hide any details. They didn't soften the pain. Every line was a mirror, painful yet necessary. In the online comments, I saw people saying they were moved. I received messages from girls who said, "You gave me courage." Others confessed, "I feel as if I've lived your story." Even Kristen sent me a tearful audio message, saying she had printed the article and shown it to her students. But in a room miles away, in the very house I had fled years before, Bill, my father, was holding that newspaper in his hands. It was Jason who told me. He read the article in silence. The whole thing. Then he stared at the photo for a long time. But he said nothing. He folded the newspaper, put it in the drawer in the living room, and left, as if he didn't know how to swallow his wounded pride. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. I wanted to feel victorious, even vengeful perhaps. But in truth I felt pity. For a man so small that he had to burn books to try to erase a future. And now, seeing my name in large letters, he found himself defeated by everything he claimed was worthless. But I didn't want his applause. I wanted him to remember, every time he read my name, that he was the one who taught me to fight against him. A few months later, I received an unexpected offer. The university's rector called me in for a formal meeting. I walked into the room nervously, thinking I had done something wrong. But he extended his hand and said, "We are looking for new names to join the university's leadership. Young people with strong ideas, real experience and courage. We want to offer you the position of vice rector of the academic sector." Thought I was dreaming. I froze for a few seconds. "Me?" I asked, almost without a voice. He smiled. "You represent exactly what this university needs. Determination. Truth. Presence." I accepted. That same week, the newspapers came calling again, this time with an even stronger headline. At 25, Kayla becomes the youngest vice-rector in the institution's history. It was then that my mother, Marcia, called me. Her first call since I left home. "I saw your photo in the newspaper," she said, her voice trembling. We were silent for a few seconds. He turned white. Said it was a setup. That all of it is a media invention. But I saw how he looked. He knew he had lost. I choked back my tears. "Are you okay, Mom?" I asked. "Better now that I know you've won." "I haven't won yet, but I'm winning." She sighed. "If you ever want, I'd like to come see you. Just me. Alone. Without him. Without any burden." I promised I'd think about it. The following month, I was invited to give a lecture at a major national education conference, one of the largest in the country. The topic: Resilience and Female Leadership in Higher Education. The stage would be immense, with an audience full of professors, rectors, and directors from institutions across the nation. I spent weeks preparing that speech. And when the big day finally arrived, something happened that I never could have imagined. Jason sent me a message. "Father is in town on business. He'll be at the conference. Not for you, but because his company is presenting software there. He doesn't know you're going to speak." My heart began to race. For a moment I thought about giving up, changing my clothes and sneaking out the back door. But I looked in the mirror and repeated to myself, "You've come this far. Now it's time to show who you are." I stepped onto the stage in a navy blue dress and firm heels. The lights shone brightly and I could see the silhouettes in the audience. And there he was, dressed in a dark suit with graying hair and fixed eyes. When they announced my name, there was a brief stir. Most in the audience already knew about the article. But he widened his eyes. He didn't applaud. He didn't react. He just stood there motionless. I began my speech by telling the story of a girl whose books were burned simply because she dared to dream. A daughter who had heard from her own father that a woman who studies too much ends up alone. I spoke about the salted rice I ate for weeks, about the hidden flashlight, about the urge to give up, and why I never did. I didn't mention any names. But every word was a mirror pointed directly at him. And when I finished, I said my final sentence while looking straight at the audience. "Thank you for believing in me. Even when the one who should have, didn't have the courage." There was applause. A standing ovation. Except for one. Bill left the room before I even stepped off the stage. He didn't look back. And that was okay. Because for the first time I didn't look back either. After the lecture I was surrounded by emotional people. Teachers wanted to take pictures. Students asked for advice. A director from another university said he wanted to implement my mentoring project for young women. But amid the crowd, one absence still weighed heavily on my soul. Bill. He said nothing. He didn't wait for me. He didn't send a single message. And even though my mind had already made peace with it, my heart still carried the scar of someone who spent a lifetime trying to be seen by those who were supposed to love, not belittle. I returned home that night with a mix of triumph and emptiness. The victory was mine, but the old wound still burned. It was only days later, sitting alone in the vice-rector's office, that everything finally changed. I received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a single newspaper page, the Daily Academic Journal page. Carefully folded. The section of my interview was marked with a red pen. And next to it, handwritten, were 4 words. You won. I lost. The handwriting was his. For several minutes I just stared at it, waiting for anger, for tears, but nothing came. No tears, no tightness in my heart. Only relief. Because in that silent sentence he was finally confessing what he never had the courage to say out loud. That he had tried to erase me and I survived. That he had, without meaning to, taught me to resist. And in that moment I realized, I never needed his applause. My story was no longer about him. It wasn't about reconciliation or forced forgiveness. It was about me. About the path I walked with bruised hands and a heart that had been scarred. About every time I kept going when no one believed in me. It was about the girls who now looked up to me as a role model, who saw in my struggle a reflection of their own pain and strength. Months later, I was officially appointed as the university's rector, the youngest in the institution's history. There was a ceremony, speeches, media coverage. I received flowers, phone calls, even invitations to write a book. But the most memorable moment came afterward. I created a full scholarship program for women in situations of violence or family abandonment. I called the project Lanterna Debaixo da Cama, flashlight under the bed, in honor of the small light that guided me in my darkest moments. At the launch ceremony, I was called to the stage to present the first awardees. When I looked at the audience, I saw Marcia, my mother, seated in the front row. She wore a simple light blue dress, yet she had a smile I had never seen before. A smile of someone who for the first time felt free. Perhaps she had never managed to leave that house. But seeing her daughter on stage was like opening a window after years of suffocating confinement. After the event, she hugged me tightly without saying a word. And in that silence I understood everything. Years passed. Today my story is found in books, documentaries, and lectures in public schools and regional universities. Sometimes I pause to listen to a girl recite one of my phrases without even knowing that she is speaking about me. And that moves me more than any award ever could. Because I know that as long as there is a girl silenced, burned out in silence like I was, my voice will continue to matter. And what about my father? We never spoke again. I learned that he still lives in the same house, still rules everything like a general, still insists to anyone who will listen that a woman must know her place. But now, he lives in a world where his own daughter's name appears on signs, websites, research projects, and national campaigns. A world where he can no longer control anything. And that, for me, is enough. I never needed his approval. Nor did I need reconciliation. I only needed to be stronger than the fear he tried to instill in me. Today I am a beacon for others. And no fireplace in the whole world has the power to extinguish that light. What did you think of this story of revenge and justice? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and tell me which moment was your favorite. Would you have done something differently? Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and don't miss any of our stories full of twists and impactful endings.